the SM Media Podcast Network.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Report right here on SM Media, where we discuss all things Celtic and fairly routine win in the League Cup. Rangers away in the semi-final. But we'll cover a few things tonight. We'll cover obviously the game on Sunday where Celtic were convincing. I don't think they needed to really get a second gear, but obviously a wee bit of club news during the week, and obviously the protests are still ongoing. To join me as always this week as well, back on after a good show last week. It's a pleasure to welcome back Stuart Ross.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on so soon.
I mean, where we kind of part last week, where Celtic had obviously got the result in the league against Kilmarnock. I think we were all expecting Celtic to beat Partick Thistle. 4-0, probably as routine as it gets, but maybe a couple of things we'll cover before we get into the actual game. Obviously, Friday came out, Celtic released their financial reports. I'm just going to run through a few things here before we start. I'm not an accountant or anything like that. I work in finance. I work in finance to a degree, but I don't. Some of these are just nonsense to me. But just to kind of main headlines, Celtic have released their financial results for the year ended 30th of June 2025, announcing a large 33.9 million in profit after taxation, which is up from 13.4 million in 24. I know enough, Stuart, to say that that's pretty good profit.
Yep.
33 million. I think a lot of businesses in Scotland would kill for that. Even a fraction of that. Record group revenue of 143.6 million, which is a 15.2% increase on last year. Operating expenses are up 13 million to 117.1. And probably the most eye-catching thing, and I think a lot of the protests are down to this alone, the club's cash reserves, despite the big profit, have stayed largely consistent with last year's total and are declared at 77.3 million. We've got a statement from Peter Lawwell we'll read in a wee second, but overall, from a business point of view, those are fairly extraordinary numbers.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever had issue with how Celtic are run from that side of things as a business. But ultimately, we're not a business or a football club, and that makes it slightly different. So I think that's why we're still seeing, obviously, again today, and we'll continue to, I presume, I would imagine for the foreseeable. Like I say, some pretty eye-catching. The year-end cash is the one that everyone's going to immediately be drawn to, and it's all right pointing out that there was what was it, acquisition of player registrations was up, to shy of 40 million, and you'd look at that and say that's not bad, but that's looking without looking at the amount that's still there in the bank and still to come in. I don't think that will, I think, generally not cover the Kuhn money, perhaps other bits and pieces from the summer.
Kuhn money won't be part of that, I'm afraid.
And obviously there was further money spent towards the end of the window as well, to Netk, but we're sure these kind of guys that cost money, so they'll that'll be accounted for as well. But yeah, just predictably on a Friday night, again, not maybe in terms of communication, and that probably doesn't really help the cause either. I don't think, doing that kind of thing. But no surprise, I suppose. Ultimately,
that's the big thing from my perspective as well. Is that I'm imagining, like, Friday night, some of the kind of times they're releasing things are just quite strange in itself. But I would imagine the Celtic board are like, Friday night, that's a good time to get this out. This will probably help our cause. nobody is saying Celtic aren't and shouldn't be in a really good financial position, right? If you are a shareholder, if you are a sponsor, if you're a fan, even just take away all the kind of restlessness at the moment, you cannot be worried about Celtic financially because that is amazing numbers from a business point of view, right? There's football clubs down in England who would kill for that level of cash terminal, level of cash reserves,
Yeah.
right? Who are earning far more money than Rangers from Celtic and Rangers from a television point of view, but they won't have the cash reserves because their board are probably looking at gambling a bit more. That being said, this only fuels a lot of fires because, as you say, the communication, it's not the best time. It just continues to prove the point of Celtic have got all these cash reserves and are doing so well financially. Why is it not being spent? Why 77.3? I mean, I'm not saying Celtic should spend every penny of that, but even spending 25 of it leaves you 48 million, still a pretty good number to have in the bank.
Yeah,
And
it's the question
it is
everyone
that
wants to know
simple,
the
isn't
answer
it?
to.
Aye,
It
it's
is.
like,
Yeah, it's like you say, you just look at that and you immediately go, would another 10, 15, 20 million really have? And if you can get, if that was another two or three, 5, 6, 7 million pound players, would that really have made that much of it? I know it was quite an obvious, it's been quite an obvious one the last week, given the start that Sebastian Tenetke's made to say, well, if he was, it was obviously, mentioned today plenty of times, if he was here, would that be the kind of player that would have helped you break down a really stubborn team like Kyra Almaty over two legs, possibly? So it just it's that you can look at it and go, is that, and I think there's a bit of in the statement are just still that where the mentality is or the kind of approach is that it's continue to balance short-term performance with long-term financial stability, factor in long-term implications of decisions made today. So there's still obviously an inherent conservatism in the board in terms of, and they'll look at it and go, well, no Champions League this year, given the state of the coefficient, unlikely to be guaranteed Champions League football again anytime soon. So, and that opens up the whole debate about being prepared for these games anyway. But you can see it. That's their thinking is that that won't be like that every year. We won't have Champions League 4, 5 Champions League home games last season. We'll have 5, hopefully maybe 4 minimum, hopefully 5, 6, whatever Europa League.
yeah.
So, but that's not going to be anywhere near the kind of value, the kind of lead to the same kind of revenue that you would get from Champions League. So you understand that, but that still doesn't, still doesn't cut it when you look at that. And like you say, that other clubs across football, it'd be hard pushed to find one with as much money just sitting in the bank because, like I say, ultimately they are, but football clubs are businesses, but the football clubs first. I think that's as much as you can say, well, we have increased how much we're spending on players, even more than brought in on paper there. Like I say, it's not a few, probably other bits of business to be added to that. But at that point in time, that snapshot, then that's fair to say, yeah, you spent more money on players and they've sold for. So, but with all that extra sitting in the bank, I think for fans as well, you're looking at not just, well, if is there another project, is there other infrastructure? Barfield obviously was given the kind of big reveal just before they came out on Friday night, the financial results, and that's fantastic. Looks a brilliant facility for the women's team with the
I
academy.
actually drove by last week. It does look very smart.
It looks great. So but that's obviously accounted for within them. So but that's what else, what other parts of infrastructure of the club can be improved. See the minutes coming out the other week with fans meetings saying that there's no kind of push or drive to do anything to the main stand. There's no other kind of commitment in terms of there was discussion about hotel, museum, all that sort of stuff. None of that seems to be kind of at a stage that would be an investment at this point. So yeah, you do wonder, and obviously, is you want that money spent on the park then, and it's just yeah. So like I say, it's not. Don't feel like you're asking for too much to just push it just that wee bit more, and that obviously that as predicted that this was just going to show that for that even clearer when the results came out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I spoke to somebody Friday night based down south, and they had asked the question, why are the board getting this level of flack when, I mean, those numbers are remarkable. I said that's kind of the reason they're getting it, is the simple reason that's great numbers wise. When you're penny pinching, it is penny pinching. Let's not get that. That is what that is. That's been proven on Friday night when you've got cash reserves of 77 million, and what you mentioned about Ballaquish and Taneke, like I would expect those signings to be made and two or three others for higher value. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's what clubs of Celtic's ilk in Europe are doing. Like you mentioned about Kairat, they played against Sporting Lisbon. Sporting Lisbon's spend, I think, was 55 million. Now they've received 65 million for one player in terms of selling, but that's kind of the way clubs are operating in Europe, is they're selling players for big money and reinvesting that and more in certain areas. I just think it's a big reason that the protests will keep going. Like to me, like that releasing
yeah.
your account should be a good thing, and it is a good thing. Like, business wise, it's a good thing. But to me, I think it's just fueled the fire with the support. And you saw today in terms of the protests, the AGM in
Yeah.
November. Like I've spoke a lot in the past few years about Celtic's AGMs becoming quite farcical, just with some of the questions asked.
Mm,
There's 9 or 10 questions I would have if I was at that, of like what he's actually looking to do here.
mm.
And especially you mentioned no Champions League, and no Champions League guaranteed for the next few seasons is sort of a that cash that, not saying it will go down that much, but already I mentioned next season I don't think it'll be 77.3 million just because there's no Champions League. So
Yeah.
already that looks like what they're kind of banking on with the cash reserves is already going to go because they haven't moved in the Champions League. Like, do you know what I
Aye,
mean?
I think the big problem was, and at least is communication, and
Yeah,
that's what Brendan Rodgers has mentioned in terms of this on Friday. I think if I just want to see what is the strategy, I think you take this all the way back to Don Mackay and coming in as the new chief exec and looking like there was going to be in terms of that was one of his strong points, and he's kind of marketing communications background. In terms of his communication, it was going to be open, it was going to be clear, it was going to be he was going to have profile, and Celtic were going to benchmark the club against other clubs of size that you mentioned. There, Sporting Lisbon, Club Brugge, another one that you could point to. Um, Sides that are in leagues of a similar ilk to Celtic,
mm-hmm.
but who are moving on um, and at keeping pace enough with Europe. And these clubs of Celtic, these clubs aren't going to break into the absolute elite. But as the worry is for fans, and this is kind of starting to see, is that if you don't keep up enough, you're going to get left behind even where you are just now. So I think all this comes down to what is the club strategy, what's how measuring success. Domestic success is great, and but Europe has always been the area where the club should be testing themselves more, and there still doesn't seem to be that. Certainly the way that the summers went, it doesn't look like that's what the strategy or the vision is. So I think until such times as anyone comes out and gives it more than just a statement, a couple of paragraphs on the end of these financial results, again, there's no, especially you know what it's like in this day and age. terms of communications. You can't hide behind that anymore. You need to be more visible. You need to be more, and there has been fan kind of events, but these have been behind closed doors, and it's only, certain fan media or certain fan groups that get to be there and
It
hear.
needs to be separate from the club. It needs to be Nicholson going on, whether it's a Sky or
It
BBC.
needs to be. I think there needs to be something, but I don't whether we'll see that now. Whether the protests continue during the year and that makes difference, we'll see. But I think that's what this comes down to is, and maybe next summer, just kind of talked about a wee bit last week in terms of whether um, it's Brendan Rodgers or it's another manager. There'll need to be a clear um, in terms of what the club's plans are going forward, or this will continue beyond and into next season. And for the foreseeable until, like say, somewhere down the line here, there will be potentially more fan input into the board, more different, fresh ideas, fresh energy coming into the board, and that then Celtic can start. And like you say, it's not saying that there's things business-wise wrong. There's nothing. If anything, it's too good. That seems to be the
Yeah,
problem.
I
But
think that's the thing. I think that's a good summary
it's
of it. It's too good.
how the club are going to move forward, and how, I think that's ultimately what fans want to see. So yeah, like I say, no surprise it was Friday night, no surprises there was loads of money, and no surprises today. There's further protests, and yeah.
Yeah,
It's
well,
kind
just on the protest, we will get to the game. Just before we kind of touch on the overall game performance, just quickly on the protests. There was obviously a banner saying all Celtic fans against the board. I always find that a bit bad when you go down that route, because I'm not of the opinion every single Celtic fan, to imagine most of them, I don't imagine every single Celtic fan is of the opinion that they want this boardroom. I don't think that. I think when you get to that stage, I always think that's a bit disingenuous. I always think that's not the road to go down. There was a sack the board banner, and then there was a kind of image of Dermot Desmond crossed out. Now, he's probably the one that maybe hasn't been mentioned. That is it fair to say maybe we're at the stage, maybe should be getting mentioned a bit more now? Dermot Desmond, I think I read this, hasn't been at an AGM since 2004. Is that right? I'm sure it's something like that. He hasn't been at an AGM since 2004.
Yeah, it's just
Plays,
been his
yeah,
son that goes
and
as represents.
I think Dermot Desmond, from what and obviously there's other sports that Dermot Desmond's involved in. From what you hear, he's playing golf almost every hour of the day. So like Dermot Desmond's obviously in the background, but as the major shareholder. Are we now at the stage where we start questioning whether he needs to get a bit more flack, or is it still the front facing, like Nicholson, like Lawwell Mackay? Because they're the three; those are the three that are getting
Yeah.
all the flack. Is Desmond getting underlooked here in this regard?
Um, I don't know. I think he's still, like I say, mentioned and still. Um, I mean, he's the chief executive officer, so he has how, I think most people's perception is that Desmond, despite not actually, probably he's not even majority, is its principal shareholder. He doesn't
Yeah,
even have it's. He has a bigger influence than that shareholding maybe warrants or merits, or you know I don't know enough about it to say other one way or another. But that is a perception. So, but whether that, like you say, for somebody who's not actually been at an AGM, rarely at games, would that affect? Is it a similar situation to what Rangers over at, this, they've got owners who are now not they are on a kind of semi-regular basis. So these guys got a ton of other business interests, and like I said, not living in the bubble, a Glasgow. So how much it affects him, regardless, I don't think. I think it's more Nicholson and Ballwell for now in terms of still being the chairman. They're the ones that are they're the most public facing, and I think the Desmond things, until I think they said at the last one that it would be his son would take on the
Yeah.
so they've no intention of selling their at the moment principal shareholding, so and it's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon um unless anything drastic happens. So yeah, I think probably should be put in with those guys, as those are clearly the three key people. So is that as effect is targeting him as effective or whatever? I don't know. I think those guys will who are there kind of more day to day or on the ground in the club running it will feel the heat certainly a lot more than I'm sure Desmond will like to say, likely on a golf course. But I'm sure that's not true all the time.
I think he certainly likes his golf, is what I've always been told. But in terms of the game, let's get into the actual football. 4-0 win at Partick Thistle, boots a place in the semi-final. Overall positives. Let's start with the player that was mentioned, Tenecti again. I thought was just at the heart of everything. Like we've spent about 20 minutes criticising the board and their transfer policy over the summer, but they left it late. But even already, you're like, this does look like a good bit of business.
Yeah, it's exactly what was. I mean, I know I've mentioned it already. It was mentioned today in terms of he's exactly the kind of guy you would have wanted for
Yeah.
the kind of games. But I think that's past now. The whole transfer window's past now. Um, but given all that, is exactly what Celtic need just now. Somebody who'd really come in, hit the ground running, an exciting winger, looks like exactly what this team specifically in terms of the whole system is heavily reliant on the wingers. A lot of build-ups, all for getting it out to the wingers, 1v1, so they can create. Um, so seen Rogers' first season back, issues with that in terms of just the recruitment that summer. It wasn't great of its own accord. Injuries and stuff as well, probably that season, but just how much that hurt Celtic until second part of the season we've got things going. But and last season you had Maeda and the form of his life and Nicholas Kuhn. So the whole summer, there was clear it was clear that both of these players were going to leave. One of them got to leave, one of them didn't. So that those positions were obviously key, and the fact that they have went and brought in two in terms of him and Bartley Wisher was clear that we were going to lose on in terms of Maeda and Kuhn. So yeah, he looks exactly what is needed, and I think just having somebody like that gives um just excitement of watching again. I think if things on the pitch were a bit stodgy again, were a bit that then just feeds into to the rest of the narrative. Whereas I think he's trying to do a really good job at Rodgers in terms of trying to separate the pitch and what's going off, and he's been again diplomatic today asked about it, and I can sure he's going to get pretty bored of being asked about it every single week if it
Yeah.
continues, which it will, which is totally fair enough. But in terms of saying, that's a separate thing, and I'm not going to tell fans what to say, but focusing on what's on the pitch. And I think a big part of it is down to him, but I think you're just starting to see a wee bit of rhythm coming back, um, wee bit of joy kind of in the football. I think he said something like putting a smile on the football. I think he's a guy that you need for that, because he's just come in and grabbed it with both hands, and just he's generally play with a smile on his face and looking to take people on, just everything that football fans want to see. A winger taking men on, scoring goals, setting stuff up. So yeah, I think his emergence, and he was one on deadline day that in fact he was the only deadline day signing at the end in terms of Iheanacho being the day after, but he couldn't have been any more um under the radar, or just everyone's thought heads were somewhere else when he was brought in. It was going to take something pretty special on that last day to pull it back, but it turns out that someone somewhere, or the recruitment team, get a big credit there, because he looks like, even that, I think we'd said when I'd looked at him initially, you're thinking that's probably a wee bit of an overpay. But that was only just based on numbers, based on he's not played a huge, he'd only just moved to Hammarby this year, and um, so, but you're starting to think that's probably going to look like a really, really good bit of business. If he continues as he is, then yeah, it's going to look like, money very much well spent there.
I thought the front three as a whole, just in terms of the balance, was a lot better. Just in terms of you had Yang, who's natural on the right. I thought Iheanacho still looks a wee bit behind in terms of match sharpness, but I think overall we'll get there. And we mentioned Tanek, who I thought was superb again. And I just feel when you've got that, you've got three up front are natural in the position. It just makes it so much easier. I'm not saying Balikwish is not going to play a role, but to me, at the moment, when Yang and Forrest are kind of natural right wingers, I think Yang, what I've seen today, just Yang's a bit ahead. Still not to say, like, we know his inconsistency as his killer, but I thought today, just he got that goal. You could tell what it meant to him. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the front three on Wednesday. Sorry.
Um, yeah, I think that the whole, was just praised there for the Tuneki sign, and Backwisher, and looking like there was a bit of plan in there, which I think we mentioned last week. But the right wing's obviously been an issue. That's been an oversight. There's a deal or two somewhere have fallen through there,
Mm-hmm.
because you know and I stuck up for him last week, obviously, because he's my guy, because I had him earmarked myself. But he's not a right winger, I think, and he said that's as much. He said it was on him, Rodgers, that but he's got to try him, and I think it's just going to be a bit like that. The right hand side, it's going to be a bit. I wouldn't be surprised that, given how Taneki's started, that at the moment that left side's his. Um, Obviously, longer term, got Jota to come back at, but even in the short term, wouldn't be surprised if you maybe see Iheanacho through the middle, and even Maeda on the right. I think
Yeah.
he's played there before. Again, not ideal for him, but
I actually forgot all about Maida. That's bad. Maida will
I
play.
think I think he's not. Rogers hasn't tended to use him there a lot. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
probably played a lot more on the right under Ange, when it was obviously Maeda sorry, him and Jota.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that I think that's an option. Yang, I think, yeah, but fine today. Attacks the back post well for his goal. And look tidy. Got to take into consideration, obviously, championship opponents and that sort of thing. We've seen enough of Yang now to know that, when he can be good, he can be quite good. But it's the inconsistency, and when he's not so good, it's probably not. I think if you'd sat anyone down at Celtic and thought that him and Forrest at 34, for a fantastic player and fantastic servant, and not to say that he's still not got a role to play, but I think those two as your first choice, as your two right wingers, would not have been anyone's kind of long term. I know Jota as well, but that injury was known about as well. So, because I think now, if you're looking at it, if Jota was fit, it would be Jota on the right, Drenke on the left, and one of probably my head at the moment, until, like you say, Ian Achos, he's not played a lot. I thought, really, I think he still gives more, because he's more a centre forward. He does give more of a focal point than Maeda. You can see how tidy he is on the ball, and hopefully, he'll up to match fitness, and I don't maybe see him starting on Wednesday. I think, but um, given that him and Maeda are the only two actual centre forwards in the Europa League squad, then um, yeah, I don't think Yang he's honest as well. I don't think he always puts a shift in. Done that again today, and like I say, takes his goal well, quite tidy. I think obviously with all the focus on Taneki on the left, and a lot of the play again was going down the left with Tierney and Hatate on that side as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be just maybe some that's going to be managed between now and certainly January until Jota's back. That there might be a few people. I was surprised to see a few people fill in that right wing position, and I suppose for Yang, you must look at that as an opportunity. A guy who thought he was out the door, but here's an opportunity. He was given the start today when maybe people would have thought might have went Balikwisha and Taneki again and maybe swapped them or whatever and given Balikwisha another chance from the start. But um, he can't do much more, Yang, I don't think, than today, given what we know about him. And yeah, I thought Balikwisha looked quite good when he come
I
on as
thought he
well.
did. It was a
Squeeze
good,
that in
it was a
there
good
just so.
channel on the left as
So
well.
but yeah.
On the
But yeah,
left,
the left, it's just an issue because you're going to have Taneki, Jota, whether Maeda's still here in January, but there you go, Balikwisha. I think Yang either side. I think, but I think he would maybe prefer to play on the left because I think he's one of those you're the stronger. You're going coming in the field. Forrest's a wee bit different, but he's kind of more often played on the right. So yeah, like I say, I think it's just going to be one of those positions till January that like he threw Balikwisha in there last week at Rugby Park. It's going to be a position that's just maybe seeing who can fit, who's going to do a job for us in this game. I don't think anyone's going to own that position as such, unless somebody starts coming into some serious form. Um,
yeah.
like yeah,
And just kind of quickly on midfield, I thought midfield. I wouldn't have been surprised if all three had been rotated, but he chose to stick with McGregor, Hatate, and Nigrin. McGregor was quite again quiet. I thought Nigrin in particular was very good today. Had two really good crosses. Just in terms of, I thought it was a lot more effective. It was kind of more the fact he was coming a lot towards the left, and that hasn't necessarily been what he was brought in to be either. It's just as if Celtic have got so many players in the left, but he was a player that I think a lot of people were like, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he gets taken out the side. He's maybe not been in the best form, but you saw today. I mean, his two assists were really good.
yeah. I think he's probably got a wee bit more flack than he really should have had recently. Considering he's just come in the door, and he's displaced Engels. I think I think he is obviously. I think when you say limited, that sounds like really harsh, but he's not got really top. He's not super quick. Technically, he's okay, but I think he's got presence. I think that's maybe what Rogers likes about him in terms of giving, especially when we're still reliant on McGregor as the six, which is needed on the ball, but it's when that ball turns over, I think you see it, and that'll be the kind of test we'll see in the next few weeks in Europe how that's going to hold up when when Celtic turn the ball over high in Europe. What does that is McGregor going to be seriously exposed to? I think Nigrin his work off the ball is probably a wee bit gone under the radar too. I think Alan Morrison had quite a good bit on Celtic Way the other day about that. Kind of just about how he he's helping that on that side of things as well. Because you're not going to get that much of that off a tat either. So um, and yeah, going forward, that and that's what we need to see more as well in terms of those two eights is getting bodies into the box and seeing that and Taneki is going to be part of that. if he's good variation in his games in terms of holding the width and creating that space for like you say that left kind of channel that Nygren hit um for the opening goal. So yeah, I think like I say, it's Partick Thistle and that, but yeah, maybe that was the kind of game today to set two up and maybe just kind of reassert himself in that position. And um, I think getting goals, Bernardo and McKeown would have been thinking today that would have been an opportunity. It wasn't to be, but I think maybe the way he was speaking again after the game in terms of like I said, getting a rhythm that it was important these three played again because those seem to be the three that are going to be the favoured unless again something like that right wing there's somebody on that bench will really need to start making an impact to change that midfield three.
Were you surprised there wasn't as much rotation, particularly obviously the back line as well? Tierney, were you surprised maybe he played? Like
Um, a wee bit. It kind of sounded like they weren't really specifically targeting any game for 90. I think they were just seeing how he's hold because I think if, it seemed to be an hour to start with, and then a wee bit longer. Obviously, sat out last weekend, so maybe that was the thinking was that just play I think it was half an hour, or whatever. Last week, come on for Sriracha. That see how he went today. But yeah, I think you probably because this is probably you know I suppose you've got the international break as well. So I think there's only what 3, 4 games now, 4 games, something like that. So it's not a huge amount. I know there's going to be 2 games a week from now till then. 2 games a week, pretty much solid after that. So I suppose it has to be played 90 minutes at some point to see how that's going to hold up.
yeah,
But yeah, I think he needs to play. I think you get that impression he needs to play, and I think that impression that they were just seeing how he held up, and if this still felt fine after an hour, 70 minutes, 80 minutes, well, let's just see how long you can. And yeah, he obviously did tire a wee bit, but he needs to play because he'll need to get that rhythm with Tuneke and the other guys in front of him. So yeah, I think. I think you would look at that game today and think, well, that's a game to rotate. But I think, given the stage of the season about to go into that kind of heavy schedule, maybe these guys just needed a wee bit more in the tank, like Tierney, like Iheanacho, again, to get him a start. If these are guys who are going to be playing pretty regular, then um, any of those guys who needed a bit more minutes in the legs ahead of that, and that was kind of the opportunity to do that and keep rhythm, not break it up too much, and have a sticky performance. I think it felt like in general, again, context a championship side and Partick Thistle who have been going fine, but you wanted to step take another step after last week. And just keep it going in the right direction. So yeah, it's understandable to not see a huge amount changes.
obviously again Donovan I thought was pretty good again, kind of growing more and more in. I wanted to touch on a player who wasn't in the squad, and I'm fascinated to see what your thoughts are on this. Again, no, and nothing regarding Simpson Pusey. Not a thing. Not even in the squad today. Wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe something in terms of injury, but is it not quite concerning that he's not even there today if there's not an injury?
Um, it's quite um, it's quite interesting comments on because I think he was asked about this on Friday, wasn't he?
I think he
Um,
was, yeah.
and he said, I was just going to look at it again because it was quite interesting. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, so I don't want to misquote
There
him.
was
But
no
he,
no Anamura and no Anamura and Yamada
yeah,
in
I
it
don't.
as well. Like,
I think anyone's surprised by that.
mhm,
What I would say is I think these guys are still going to be needed at some point.
mhm,
As much as I think Inamura's maybe a different case and that they went and brought in another left back, so he's third choice. So, and if he's a development project, the dreaded project word, he probably should have had a loan. Yamada's maybe a wee bit different. He's now maybe seen as like a third, fourth backup striker. at some point are going to get injuries, some point are going to get suspensions or whatever. These guys will still be in, let's say,
Kenny wasn't in the
schedule will
squad either,
get
was he?
heavy. Kenny. These guys are still going to be needed. I
Yeah.
think specifically in the Simpson Pusey one, as like I said, I was just wanting to because he said he's here for 12 months at least, and it was a medium to longer term signing, which is a bit of an odd thing to say about
Aloni
a
for a season.
season-long loan player. And there's no option to buy either, so
Yeah, I know.
or obligation to buy or anything like that. So it does seem a bit of an odd one, and I think he said as well. So I'm like, we had our centre back, so it was clearly Carter Vickers, Scales, Trusty, and Murray, who he's a big fan of Murray. He looks a talent too. So why bring in another player a similar profile, similar point in their career to potentially block that path and all? I think Murray seems to play on either side. That sometimes gets overstated as well in terms of and he's always said a bit like imbalance, and I think that's why Scales plays a lot. That's why he obviously
I
went and
think
got
Scales
Trusty
and Carter Vickers are the two at the moment. Like,
so is he back up to Carter Vickers? But you've got Murray there. I presume Murray would play before. He's obviously he had minutes at Man City last season. He was I'm not pretending to watch a lot of Premier League 2, but he was named player of the year there. So it's clearly a young player with a load of talent, and it seems, like you said, it just seems a bit odd for all
I mean,
concerned in terms
famously,
of.
famously he played against Sporting last season when Gyökeres absolutely tore him apart. So it's like it's not
I'm
like
pretty sure he
he's.
played played the Celtic pre-season last
I think he did
season
as
as
well.
well,
Yeah, but
and
it's like it's just how when you
Celtic
look
won.
at that, and again, like when like Inamura and Yamada, like when they're not in Europa League squad, and again, like I was expecting a bit more rotation today. It's just like these are the sort of games you would imagine, whether they start or not, you would expect them to get some sort of minutes.
Mhm.
It's just that again, it's just showing as this summer's just been weird and
Mm.
like
Unless there is if he is, what you take take him at his word in terms of medium to longer term. Is it a potential um, bit of planning if Carter Vickers moves on next summer that he would be able to step in there? They were certainly linked with the young centre back that is it Bournemouth he went to from Red, was it Red Star
yeah.
Belgrade?
But here's what I'm going to say in that regard. Like if
So
it is the kind of long term plan that Carter he replaces Carter Vickers, would you be happy if like he play? Let's say for example he plays 10 games, looks fine,
mm,
and Carter Vickers moves on, and that's the kind of long term replacement. I don't think the Celtic board will buy. I don't think the Celtic fans will buy that.
no, I didn't say
No, but that's
that. No, I
that's
get it. Yeah, no, I
kind
get what
of
you
what
mean.
you
Yeah,
would
totally.
imagine
Yeah.
long. I just don't understand how you say a season long loan and there's a longer term signing. Like longer
Mm,
terms, what like January, February, and is Man City going to be happy
yeah.
with a player that did play a wee bit last season? I know he only played maybe 6 games for Man City last season. Don't think they'll be
Mm.
happy that he's just sitting about until January.
No, I mean a lot of time with these deals will be, you know, built in that they need to play X
Yeah.
amount of minutes. So it's like, yeah, I don't have the answers for that one either. It seems really weird. But and again, you're like, oh, I say go back to just what I said there in terms of it's still a quarter final. We're still at, well, I say precarious is probably overstating it, but still at a point in the season where you don't want to start breaking
Yeah.
because as much as off the pitch, it's all been said. Um, on the pitch, it's not been, it's been a steady start, but you know, obviously it's a Kyrat game. There's Ibrox and it wasn't great in terms of performance. There's been some sticky performances, and amongst the whole backdrop to what's going on, you want to start building up. And let's say, I think you've seen that today. So yeah, I just in an ideal world, you would maybe want to play somebody like that in a game like today, but I just don't think it would have been given given the few moments that Carter Vickers had. I don't imagine throwing a young player in would have been ideal on that pitch. I don't know how long the grass actually was. It did look a wee bit long, but I don't know how much of an excuse that really was. But it was a few moments at the back. Obviously putting Sinisalo in as well,
Mhm.
which is obviously, if he's got to be a cup keeper again, that's fair. But his distribution was maybe at times a wee bit ambitious to be putting a good spot. There's a few passes he maybe, I don't think maybe Carter Vickers would have thanked him for that one he gave him.
Aye,
Anyway,
that was
given
bad. Aye.
the ball was sticking a wee bit, so yeah, whether somebody like something Pusey does get a chance in the next, so maybe a home game during midweek in December or something, in November, December, he will get a chance. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get any chance at all. And that would be especially um, strange.
Before we wrap up, obviously, game on Wednesday night, Europa League away at Red Star Belgrade, or Crvena Zvezda, as you're meant to say, but Red Star Belgrade will always be me. What we're thinking in terms, I don't think the squad, I don't think the team will be too much different. I think Maeda will come in, probably through the middle. I don't think there'll be much rotation though.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think Iheanacho would probably be ready for that. I
No.
think. I think you're Taneke, Maeda,
Balikwisha?
and then you're the right. No, I don't. Yeah, possibly. I think and I've seen a bit today in terms of swapping sides a few times. I think it's absolutely clear Taneki's more comfortable or
Yeah.
he's on the left, and Balikwisha's the same. So you can do that a couple of times just to kind of try and disrupt the opposition a wee bit. But I'd be surprised given what he said about Balikwisha whether he goes from or if like I say I think it's just going to be you know just muddling through a bit on the right side. So maybe would he go with Forrest, given his
Yeah.
experience, security on the ball? I think that's an issue with Yang, especially higher level opposition is, can he hold on to the ball? And that's important in Europe. And I think Forrest that, he's always been quite good at that, being pretty secure on the ball. So, didn't get any game time today though, so I don't know if that suggests he would play or wouldn't play. Question mark on the right side, basically.
We will wrap up for this week, mate. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
No worries, thanks for coming on
Thank
again.
you very
Good to
much. Thank
chat.
you very much. We'll see you all next week. We'll take a look at, we'll talk about Red Star and talk about Hibs. We'll see you all soon.